And to discuss the political implication of the controversy, we are not joined by Dr. Abdurrahman Hamisu. He is a political scientist and he is joining us virtually this morning. Dr. Hamisu, thank you for joining us. Good morning.
Thank you for having me. Good morning. Good morning, Nigerians.
Good morning to you. Let's start with the fundamental issue here. Atiku says Nigerians deserve answers over these projects reportedly worth $20 billion. That's about 27 trillion naira. Now, is this a legitimate accountability question that the presidency should address? Or are we simply seeing another political battle between a Tinubu and an Atiku?
Well, first of all, we have to understand the fact that public funds are public funds, and public funds demand some level of accountability.
Right.
And there are processes that are involved. So once those processes are not followed, there are questions that ought to arise. And it doesn't matter who is asking those questions. We could debate the timing, but that does not preclude the fact that those questions must be asked and answers must be provided.
Right. And so it's not a case of between the presidency and the opposition. It is a case of accountability to the Nigerian people because it has involved public funds. Is that what you're saying?
Of course. What you are doing this morning is part of the things that we need to do as citizens, to ask questions, how our resources are being spent, and whether those resources that are being spent follow the legal procedure that the Constitution allows or any other regulation, especially the Procurement Act. We all know that in Nigeria, Procurement Act talked about competitive bidding, and that every Nigerian, whether those companies are from Nigeria or they are from abroad, they must be given equal opportunity to present themselves to be considered for the award of contract to provide services. So if this is not done, even if it is a 5-year-old person that have a sense of propriety and is asking questions, we shouldn't really say it from political point of view. It could as well be said that your platform is equally political or has joined opposition by trying to bring light to this very particular conversation by illuminating the exchanges that are happening between the presidency and the Atiku camp. But again, it is a constitutional thing. It is a responsibility of stakeholders, especially citizens, who desire to know.
And why do you think the opposition is quite interested in this particular matter now as regards to the funds involved, the amount or the volume of this amount? Or is it because of the relationship between government now and this said business person? I mean, it's not the first businessman who's got affiliation with government, right? But
yes, of course. We're talking about reform. We're talking about value for money. We're talking about Nigeria being broke. Nigeria is not broke in terms of resources. Nigeria is broke because we filter away resources that are meant to change the lives of the citizens. If you look at what is happening, I'm not saying that the road is not important, but that the 2025 budget for Nigeria, the entire capital expenditure for 2025 appropriation stood at 23 point something trillion. That is the entire capital expenditure that's supposed to grow the economy. I'm talking about the 2025 budget.
Right.
And now you have a road construction that is worth 27 trillion, which is more than the capital expenditure expended for 2025 budget. Now, we have a situation whereby ASU has been threatening to go on strike. The government has been trying to pacify them. You have medical NBA, that is a Nigerian Medical Association, NMA, trying to embark on strike. A lot of associations want to embark on strike because they feel that they take home, they cannot take them home. Add that again to the insurgency that we are fighting. Add that again to issues around banditry. And then a whole lot of things that are happening that Nigeria cannot really sustain because for the fact that the economy is not doing well, power supply is abysmal low. We could have grid collapse like back to back, maybe 1 hour, apart for the whole day. And before the light could be restored, power could be restored, may take like 24 hours or thereabout. And we're talking to the fact that we want to be one of the economies that's supposed to be reckoned with in Africa. How can we become the biggest, the largest economy where investors are willing to come in if insecurity continues? We're not solving that, power outage, and so on and so forth. Now, then we're now prioritizing a road, a single road that will take almost like half of the budget for 2025. Though it's a continuous thing, the financing may not come at once. But what I'm saying is that we have other pressing needs, and that if the process did not follow, if the process did not follow through as the way it ought to follow, then we should have questions. Because we live in a country where privileges and connections, especially informal settings, usually drive formal settings. And we have a situation where there is a state capture, where those in power usually bring their cronies to be awarded contract in order to recoup their campaign finances. These are things that are known. So if Nigerians feel that this particular contract is one of those contracts that looks like white elephant project, that is not like a top priority, where the country needed to invest more in power generation, in security, in employment generation reforms, and then we're now having to concentrate more than half of a budget of a year on the construction of one road, then it raises a lot of questions that needed to be answered.
All right. Dr. Hamisu, should we also be concerned about the, should I say, reputation and integrity of the individual who's been mentioned, Mr. Shagri, who, I mean, has a very long relationship and connection with the president? He's handled quite a good number of projects in the country. In fact, their relationship dates all the way back to when Mr. President was governor of Lagos State. But we understand that he was convicted of money laundering by a Swiss court in 2000. He was convicted in connection with money laundering related to funds linked to the Abacha regime. But despite all of that, he's maintained relationship with the ruling class and, in fact, with the country ever since then, culminating, in fact, with the award of a national honor. When you look at the trajectory of our relationship with Chagri, some people begin to ask questions like, oh, is he the only one? Don't we have other people who can handle contracts and projects? And I mean, he's handling quite a good number of them. The Calabar-Lagos coastal highway, for instance, is being handled by his company. So some of these questions, what do you make of them?
Well, of course, at the point, Shagori had to literally run out of Nigeria when President Obasanjo assumed power in 1999. And he was able to work his way back to Nigeria because he was fingered in a lot of things. When you have a controversial individual that has a very long history of controversies that borders on corruption, that borders on money laundering, that borders on things that will not really add any significant image to the administration, I think the best thing is to distance oneself from such individuals, especially when the government is saying that they are fighting corruption. Then it becomes a mockery of corruption itself. And then that raises the question of double standard. We cannot be celebrating Malami in orders that have been asked to forfeit their properties, including the former Idris, the former Accountant General of the Federation, and the likes of them. And then you have a Shogori that is known all over the world for its controversies in terms of tainting a government that is close to. So it is something that every concerned Nigeria that believes in the rule of law, reforms, and anti-corruption ought to frown at, because it does not tell well that somebody who literally ran out of Nigeria, who has been settling out of court because our own laws are not working, because our institutions are personalized, and we work at the discretion of the president or any other powerful individual, and then is able to find his way back. And so crowning it all with an award, as far as I'm concerned, is an insult to the sensitivity and sensibility of Nigerians. Not only that, even to Africans, and equally the anti-corruption crusade of the president. As you rightly mentioned, he was convicted by the Swiss court. We're not able to do that. And it is on record that we are not even able to convict high-profile individuals in this country. We are aware of individuals that ought to be convicted in Nigeria, but Nigerian court failed to convict them, but they were convicted in either UK or in the United States of America. And here in Nigeria, they are free citizens, only that they cannot travel to America or they cannot travel to the United Kingdom. So it is unfortunate that we are witnessing this scenario and that the government is not even bothered about it. And it is because the government believes that nothing will be done and that the citizens are so relaxed, consumed by their poverty, browbeaten by the removal of subsidy, to the extent that everybody is concerned with everyday survival and we don't care about accountability. I think it is this sense of impunity that is making the government to do what it is doing. In a very same society where the people have a clarity of mind and purpose and direction, I think this very particular singular act is enough to cause the re-election of this very particular government in power.
Now, talking about the fight against corruption, we're looking at a case where some people who are supporters of this government may, look at that argument to say there are, major people in government who are now, in fact, in the custody of law enforcement agencies due to financial crimes. The likes of the former CBN governor. Just a couple of weeks ago, we had, asset forfeiture in the case involving Malami. But something you said about conviction. In terms of prosecution, there seems to be, an ongoing battle. So in your assessment, do you think the government is paying what you might call lip service to this fight against corruption?
No, not really lip service. It is selective justice. And I could understand. You see, as I said, we're a country where individuals personify office. And our system respects people in power. So if you're in the good book of the president or the first lady or any other persons for that matter, and you're a politically correct person that is serving the interests of those in power, then your corruption is no corruption. But if you fall out of line, then your corruption becomes corruption that needed to be investigated. In such a situation, we have a double standard and selective system of prosecution. In addition to the fact that we may not know the corruption that is going on in this government right away until they're able to leave power. And by the time they leave power, we will begin to see. Because the institutions of government that ought to investigate and prosecute respect people in power. Because anybody in power is assumed to be a boy to the president or a loyal boy to the president. So if you fall in line, then you don't have any problem. It is a pattern that we've been witnessing since 1999. No matter how corrupt you are, if you're in the opposition, you are corrupt. But if you join the ruling party, your sins are forgiven. So it is still the same thing that is happening today. I assure you, if Emefiele, Malami, and others were to say, therefore, Mr. President, and they gather people to sing Renew Hope item, they may not be prosecuted. So it is something that we've seen. Even in the regime of President Muhammadu Buhari, almost everybody knew what was happening in CBN and what was being done by Emefiele. But he retains his seat because those that are supposed to prosecute him feels that he enjoys the confidence of Mr. President. And, it is a system, when you have corruption going on, it is an elaborate scheme where there is a patronage system. And even those that are supposed to investigate, if they are settled very well, they are Nigerians. They go to the same market as us. They feel the economic bite. And once they can get extra cash from these sources, they allow the corruption to fester. And then this is what we are witnessing. And that is why the cost of fighting corruption in Nigeria is enormous. We allow the corruption to happen, then until the person leaves power, then we spend money to investigate the person, and then we spend money to prosecute. So why can't you stop the person on the track when the person was actually perpetrating the corruption?
Do you think that's what's happening in this PFIPC saga?
Yes. So, for instance, if the government tells us it is fighting corruption, what has happened to Betta Edu's case and those that she has mentioned? What about Halima, the lady that has been crying, that she was the person that reported the instance that was happening at the Humanitarian Affairs Ministry, and she was sacked alongside with Betta Edu. As a whistleblower, she ought to be protected, but today she's out there. What is happening? What asset has Betta Edu forfeited? And how many of those persons, Mr. President, have sacked as a result of corruption or corruption-related cases, and how many of them have their asset forfeited? Go and check. Majority of those persons that are being prosecuted is either they fall out of line or they've done something that the government feels it is unpardonable and they cannot forgive. So we should be very clear about the fight against corruption. In as much as we need the fight against corruption, it must be holistic. It must not spare voice and punish those that have courage to chart a different course for themselves and their groups.
All right. Now, back to the issue of this awarding of contracts to Mr. Shagri. Now, one thing that the current administration has been consistent with is the fact that some of the reforms that they are trying to put in place, that it's painful. And in fact, that it's the Nigerian people who would have to bear for a while until eventually we start seeing the gains. But I mean, when you have a controversy involving billions of dollars, presidential, associates, does it make it harder for the Nigerian government to actually convince its people that the burden of these reforms is being fairly shared? Or do we have a case where it's the ordinary Nigerian who is bearing the brunt, and then the elite, the contractors, for instance, in this case, a Mr. Shagri, who, we do not know the extent of the tax concession he might have had access to as a result of these contracts, who are basically enjoying what is going on.
You see, when you are asking the people to bear the pains that arising from reforms, the sacrifice ought to start with the leadership. You cannot have a system that is still leaking, a system where corruption thrives, a system where the leadership spend more on their luxuries, you have a leadership that is insensitive to the plight of the people, and you want the people to make sacrifices. It is not done. Scientifically, sociologically, and psychologically, people will kick against such calls. We've been through this road before. Under Obasanjo, it was something we were told. The reforms will be painful. We should endure a little longer, and the dividend will come. And the dividend never came. We knew the people that reaped the dividend. They were the people that were involved in the looting of PTDF. They were the people that were involved in the Ali Boto scandal. It was the same people that were involved in Siemens scandal. It was still the same people that were involved in all the abandoned projects in this country. We live in a country where the whims and caprices and the financial needs of the leaders usually inform the kind of white elephant projects that they invest in. For instance, between 1999 and 2003, we invested heavily in Koja and the completion of the National Stadium. And after that, what did we do? Nothing. And how much did we spend on Koja? Go and check, you will see. And then you are asking the people, what is the level of sacrifice Mr. President has endured? I see not change his presidential fleet. He's still not using an Escalade now. So what we are saying is, when you say people should make sacrifice, let it start from the leadership. What is the sacrifice of the National Assembly members? What is the sacrifice of the senators? What is the sacrifice of the state governors? Today, the state governors in most of the states of the Federation are remodeling their governors' lodge and government houses because of the removal of subsidy and the humongous money that has accrued from that the Mr. President is sharing to them. And instead of them to invest in eradication of poverty, giving the younger generation skills that will assist them to fight the poverty, they are engaged in remodeling government houses because they lack vision. So you can't just say that we make sacrifices and then we're not seeing any concrete steps. So if you take 27 point something trillion to build one road, what is the benefit of the road? Is it to convey people or to convey goods and services? And it is to convey goods and services. How much is the estimated value that will accrue to federal government in such a way that it will fight poverty? When people are sacrificing, and as they're sacrificing, they are being deprived, the little that is trickling down is being siphoned through White Elephant Project, as we are seeing now. Then you should expect that people will be concerned, and at the appropriate time, they will ask questions. And if they cannot get answers, they may decide to rebel against the system.
Now, lastly, because we're looking at how all of this might possibly affect the 2027 elections, this is not the first time that Alhaji Atiku Abubakar has called out the president on issues of national policy, on issues of the economy, and so on and so forth. Yes. October 2025, he called out the president on the presidential pardoning. He's called him out on the use of "On Your Mandate We Shall Stand" song during, the All Nigerian Judges Conference. I mean, several issues where Alhaji Atiku Abubakar has called out, President Bola Tinubu. And you said earlier that, in fact, this is one of the issues that should affect the re-election chances of Mr. President. What's different this time about this particular case?
You see, the truth of the matter is what the former vice president is doing, Alhaji Atiku Abubakar, is the role of the political parties. It's not the role of an individual. That is why we have competitive democracy, so that we can have alternatives. So what is happening is that the Nigerian system is a patronage system. And once it is elaborate enough to accommodate a lot of people, then it is able to sustain the party in power. But if it is narrowed in such a way that it is not able to take interest of the many into account, then the coalition will unravel, and before you know it, the party will be swept out of power. What we're saying now is that after President Muhammadu Buhari, the broad-based coalition and the patronage system continue to shrink. And that is why you could see that the margin between the contenders to the presidency, that is Alhaji Atiku Abubakar, the current president, and Peter Obi, was very, very slim. And this time around, if we take into consideration a lot of happenings from lack of cash backing for MDS to execute projects, and then spreading of the patronage system to a lot of persons that ought to benefit, a lot of persons are beginning to question why they ought to support the current president. So it is yet to be seen which will carry the day, because those that are enjoying this government are still singing "On Your Mandate We Shall Stand." And those that have been thrown under the bus are saying that there must be change. It all depends on which camp is in the majority. If we have the camp of beneficiaries of the patronage system to be in the majority, the president, no matter what happened, no matter the accusation, no matter what Atiku Abubakar is going to say, the president will be returned elected. But if those that are against, that are not able to benefit from the current arrangement, are in the majority, then change is imminent. So we keep our fingers crossed as we go into the election to see which is in the majority, whether the camp of those that feel that they were not taken along, or the camp of those that are really enjoying whatever it is, whether it is the perks of office, whether it is the corruption that we're talking about, or any other influence they are enjoying. So it is left to be seen.
All right. I want to thank you so very much, political scientist Dr. Abdurrahman Hamisu, for your thoughts on this very important conversation. And there'll be more questions on issues like this in the coming days. So I want to thank you for your expert insights. And we understand you're joining us yet again for our next conversation. Thank you so much. And we're going to go for a very short breather, allow you to get maybe a glass of water, and then we'll be back to continue our conversation.
Thank you for having me.
All right.